Amen. Excellent. Worth the wait for that. Thank you. Carol, roll call.
Vice Mayor Dick G. Here. Councilmember Dan Landrum.
Here.
Councilmember Robert Spalding.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Speak. Here. Mayor Chris Howley.
Here. Next, we will have the approval of minutes, and then I'm going to move a couple things around. We're going to move Resolution 9A to right after the approval of the minutes, because we have school tomorrow, and we don't want to keep anybody here too late as we recognize the middle school, high school technology teams. So, minutes. We have help me out, Carol. Which ones do we have?
We have May the 17th, which was a special work session, May the 25th, which was a regular work session, June the 8th, which was a special work session, and June the 18th, which was a regular meeting.
Okay.
June 6th.
June 6th would be correct.
That's the one that I have found on the first one in ever.
Oh, is it on the 6th? I thought it was on the 18th.
I regret to tell you that probably is met on the last, our next to last paragraph.
June, which one? 6.
I find that on June the 18th.
So May 17th, May 25th, June 6th, and
June 18th.
June 18th, but it's on June 6th.
No, I'm finding it on June 18th, Councilmember, Vice Mayor.
June 18th, where is it? Last page?
Okay, I'm probably out of order, hang on. Yep, you're right. June 18th.
Okay, thank you.
And where is it?
It's on the very last page.
Which paragraph?
Next to last paragraph, second line. Sam Ginn have
Sam
bet
Ginn.
with both, so should have been have met.
Sam, have you been betting with the companies? Were you betting with the two companies? Is that, I'm not sure that's appropriate.
Just say no, sir.
All right, so we'll change that to met. Any other issues or changes on the minutes? Can I get a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
With, can you make that
Move
motion
for
with the
approval
change?
with the met instead of bet.
There you go.
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Now moving on to the fun stuff. And I've got to find it in my packet here, Carol. Actually, I'm going to come get that from you, and I'll just read it out of there. Thank you, ma'am. This is resolution number 2018-49, a resolution recognizing and commending Signal Mountain Middle High School students for their outstanding performance at the 2018 Technology Students Association National Conference. Whereas students from Signal Mountain Middle High School attended the 2018 Technology Student Association, TSA for short, National Conference and finished with numerous national rankings. And whereas middle school robotics students Emma Wu, Taylor Donnan, Casey Kennedy, Kelsey Hewitt, Ethan Bullock, William Wright, Noah Rutherford, Tana Rutherford, Jack Quinn, Wade McLemore, and Carter Lynch placed 9th and 12th in the nation in the skills competition and placed 8th and 10th in the nation for the Excellence Award. And whereas 9th and 10th grade students Carson Bach, Karina Perez, Megan Salmon, and Sophie Burke placed 7th in the nation in the teams Test of Engineering Aptitude, Math, and Science Prepared Presentation Competition. And whereas high school students Jack Dowling, Savannah Payne, and Micah Smith finished in the top 12 in the nation for engineering design. And whereas Caitlin Castellan-Lennett, is that close? Caitlin? All right, am I close? Placed 3rd in the nation for middle school essays on technology, And whereas Dana McCormick placed 5th in the nation for high school essays on technology. And whereas teachers/advisors Kathy McCormick, Aaron Perry, and Rod Dodson have given their skill and talent and dedicated countless hours and incredible effort to educate, inspire, encourage, and support these and many other outstanding students. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town Council of Signal Mountain, Tennessee, does hereby recognize and commend the above Signal Mountain Middle High School students and teachers and advisors for their outstanding performance in the 2018 Technology Student Association National Conference and encourage all citizens to do the same.
With a standing ovation.
Yes. Can we get you all to come up here for a second? Oh, okay. Can I get a motion? I'll move. Second? We got 2 seconds. That's fine. And
Had no mic on.
any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. It's unanimous. Please come on up.
Good job. Good job. Great job. Technology, I like that. Good job.
Get over here out of
Get
the
y'all's
way and make
t-shirts there, huh?
sure
Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job. Great job. Okay, we're going to get on the back of it. I'm good. I'm good.
You each get a certificate. Mr. Dodson has a certificate for each of you. Each get a signed certificate to thank him. That's great.
Good job, guys. Good job. Good job. Good job.
Oh. One more thing, sorry. I'm talking about, I'm not going to hear me. We have a check to present. Did I have that in there? It might be in there. Okay. I kept the check. Check to present for $250.
There it is.
That's it. You're smart, smart.
Good, that's the fun stuff. Now, next, get back organized here. Next, we have ad hoc committee presentation on the water system. Bo, can you fill us in on this?
Ann Haygood, 506 James Boulevard. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of a group of people who have volunteered to study in depth the viability of our town water system under town ownership. When we asked to be put on tonight's, you look puzzled.
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay. When we asked to be put on tonight's agenda, the MTAS study was not a consideration. Thank you for taking the step to authorize the MTAS viability and rate study, which will examine the current managerial, financial, and technical capacity of our system. We do not intend to duplicate work and will incorporate that new information. Throughout the discussion and presentations regarding the possible sale of our water system, several of us had a lot of questions and couldn't find answers in any of the material that had been provided. We felt that more complete studies of retaining ownership of our system should be done before we abdicated control of a vital public service and a valuable town asset. We all operate in an informational bubble of sorts, so along with several other concerned citizens, we decided to do a sort of a virtual poll of town residents. We developed a petition and sat in Pruitt's for 12 hours over the course of 2 days to gauge town sentiment. The petition was very simple. It read, "We request further study of the viability of the town-owned water system before the decision to sell is made." In that short time of 12 hours, we gathered 284 names. The MTAS study changes our original mission slightly, so we are no longer requesting a formal town committee, as we feel that we can best continue with this work independently and report back to the town. This will streamline the process and allow us the flexibility to reach out quickly for expertise when and where we need it. We have developed several focus areas. One area we are exploring is the real-life experience of municipalities that have sold their systems. We will ask what affected their decisions and what, if anything, they would have done differently. We will interview the municipalities that have tried to reacquire their systems. We will explore how following the town's current 21-year plan for line replacement will create efficiencies. We will survey the market for technology improvements that could help us minimize water main breaks, improve leak detection, and prioritize capital expenditures. That one I'm kind of excited about, being the techie that I am, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. We will explore both internal and external management options. We will explore how the sale of this asset might affect our future financial position in the town. We have already begun this work and hope you'll allow us to present our findings upon completion. I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. We look forward to working with you as we all seek the best solution for our town.
Thank you, Ann. Next on the agenda is citizens'
I have a question before we leave that.
Sure.
Is it possible that we would need a resolution to accept their proposal to submit a work product, basically? She just outlined with, the things that they're trying to seek.
There is no need for a resolution that I'm aware of. You can submit anything that has become a public record. question is, when does the committee meet? Is it an open meeting? How are those decisions made? Are they going to be forwarded to you? It's a recommendation. That's an issue of whether that should be a public meeting or not. But we can accept the responses from anybody at this point in time that presents an open record.
Anything else?
I was wondering if anybody else has any, any thoughts. And they were talking about, she mentioned quite a few things in conjunction with
I
the
think you
work
need
that they
to
want to do.
put some sort of time frame around it. And I don't think you want to have it open-ended, but so whatever, what is reasonable, don't impose anything, ridiculously short or long, but come up with a work toward an end date.
Do you have an estimate on how long that would take on your committee?
And Ms. Haggood's walking back up. Have we gotten an estimate from MTS yet?
They expect to have something to us by the end of September, if not before.
It would be helpful if we could have access to that as soon as possible. We'd love to give you a definitive date, but I don't see how we can do that at this point. We have already started. We plan to work as efficiently and quickly as possible. None of us wants to spend the rest of our lives working on this. We'd like to gather the data that you need to make a good decision and get it to you as quickly as we can. We can keep you apprised, certainly, as we go along of how we're doing on that.
I wasn't thinking about a specific date necessarily, just some sort of scope of when it's going to take a couple of months, 6 months, or, that kind of thing is what I was.
Well, one of the reasons we decided against asking to be a formal town committee is because we felt like that would take a lot longer, actually, because we would have to go through all the process of setting up a committee and taking applications and choosing members and all that.
So if the impasse report is finished by the end of September as anticipated, you'll be kind of ready by the end of the year, you believe?
I would say that's certainly within the realm of possibility.
Just an idea,
Again, part of it is going to depend on what turns up as we're working. We have a pretty good idea of what's out there now. Based on what I know at this point, I would think by the end of the year is
Is it possible to give us kind of running updates, maybe come to the agenda sessions and just tell us your progress?
surely be glad to.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we'd all be interested to hear that.
And I'd really like to emphasize here that we are asking the tough questions about all of this, not to be adversarial or obstructionist. We're trying to provide you with the data that you need to make a good decision.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody got anything else?
So,
Next.
Phil, this committee is not sanctioned by the council, so they don't publicize meetings and are not subject to the open records law, is that correct?
The issue becomes, they're going to try to make recommendations to you at that point in time, whether that should be done at a public forum. But it's a volunteer committee, it's a volunteer group, and it's good information to you at any point in time. But y'all have to look at that, if you're going to consider that as a recommendation, figure out how that recommendation was developed. And that will have to occur at other meetings really here.
Phil, is your mic on?
Yes, ma'am, I didn't push the button, I'm sorry.
I'm not used to electronics here, I'm sorry. But
That's two strikes, Phil.
No,
I mean,
I will keep it on, yes.
All right.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Dan?
All right, next we have citizens, wait a minute. Citizens' opportunity to address the council. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and if you'd come up and give your name and address as you approach the mic to address the council. Done.
It's been on Dunman Road, 907 Cherokee Lane. Council members, Mr. Mayor. I've noticed a change in which citizens can respond at council meetings concerning their opposition to any zoning proposal to be proposed. In the ordinance. Now, I disagree with that change. Heretofore, all citizens have been allowed 3 minutes to bring their concerns to the council. This has been a precedent and time-honored and accepted way for citizens to have their voice heard by the council. Each and every citizen, one by one, should have their chance to get their grievance redressed. Allowing the zoning requester and those opposed to have 9 minutes apiece, time allocated, gives the council the false impression that each side is equally represented when nothing is further from the truth. Citing the request by Food City, when it came to the council, there were around 4 or 5 people in favor of a rezone, and they were facing 2,000 signatures on petition and 28 opposers who spoke. That falsely represents the truth, which would be portrayed in the 9-minute time limitation to the opposition. Such 9-minute allocation would make things look even when they're not. In the long meeting, I heard some objected to the length of time involved, but I've sat through work sessions that have taken just as long. I hope the council will place the proper value on each voter, taxpayer, and citizens of this town. And strike the last part of the proposal in the ordinance about to come before you, I think. To limit their 3 minutes. Limit to 3 minutes, each individual has to speak their minds. And I hope you restore the proper value and respect to every individual on Signal Mountain concerning their 3 minutes. And if I got a little bit more time?
I'm not timing.
You don't know? Oh, I got 4 years ago.
Dunn, what happened, Dunn, what happens if they want to come up and say what a great job we're doing? Should we limit that to 3
You
minutes?
haven't incurred that yet.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're going to come before you, as I understand, a group of small towns, municipalities, or whatever, join a group, and it's going to cost us, what, $7,000, $8,000 to join. I don't know that anybody can offer any advice to Signal Mountain government, how to govern up here, nor can we really tell them what to do. So I kind of think that's a waste, possibly a waste of money.
I think it's probably best to wait till they offer their presentation, though, before we make that
Nothing wrong with
determination.
that, but I can't, I can't
Right.
possibly see it at this
I
point.
think, when are they scheduled to come?
Work session and
This coming up? Okay. Yeah, they're going to give a presentation at the August work session.
All right, and I know we were asked by Red Bank to join them in their Chamber of Commerce venture. That's not what cost us anything, is it?
I think it's already happening. I think there's a Signal, which we weren't aware of, actually. There's a Signal Red Bank Joint Chamber of Commerce. It wasn't sanctioned by this
It's no
board.
money that we have to hand out and no harm
No.
done. Since I would say the Chamber of Commerce, their goal is to expand and the commerce. And we don't have any land. People like Cleveland who don't, they've got farmland all around. They're spread out. We ain't got it. So I really think that's not a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Ms. Morgan? Oh, I thought you were... That's fine, sorry about that. Yes, sir.
Joe Durick, 907 Kentucky Avenue. I once served as a federal auditor for the Department of Defense, the Defense Contract Audit Agency. So we looked at, obviously, a lot of agreements, some of them $700 million. So I decided what I would do is I would take a look at the agreements, at least the proposed agreements by Tennessee Water and Walden, to go ahead and see what they've actually said in the RFP. In addition, I wanted to see some of the points that we could probably do if you decide to go that route as far as negotiations are concerned. So just to give you one example and not take too much time up, in one of the responses to the town by Tennessee Water, they said that Tennessee America Water will assume financial obligations and regulatory responsibility for Signal Mountain's water system. That's if you choose to do that.
We will perform routine capital investment projects and additional and necessary capital improvements for a total of $1.25 million over 5 years. That's $250,000 every single year. And so so that's one of the points I would make, to say that's probably pretty low to be maintaining both capital improvements as well as taking care of the improvements that you're going to need. So that's what I've tasked myself to do, and I've got the RFPs and copies of it, and that's just one of the things I started with.
Have you seen the proposed agreements that were negotiated?
I did get a copy of those,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
sir. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Nancy Craig, and my address is 3160 Deerwood Lane.
Thank you, ma'am.
I just want to commend you for not rushing into a decision about the water. I think, looking at whether to sell it or not is just so good, because once it's sold, you have absolutely no control anymore over rates, where your water's coming from, fees that can be attached, and things of that nature. We went through a pretty difficult contract with one of the vendors who, we experienced some of those things, and they didn't even own us, but we, had a lot of difficulties with rates and fees and other things. So I just want to say, I don't know if Ann and her group are just looking at whether the scope to whether to sell or not, but if it's the whole thing, looking at whether to sell or whether to have someone else manage it, if they came and talked to our board, Lone Oak Utility District, we could, again, give you some, show you some of the hiccups that we experienced during our time. That's all.
You currently have Walden Ridge, correct?
We do.
When did that transaction go through?
November of 2015. And I was on the new board that was established at the beginning of 2015, and we really walked into a pretty big mess, and it took us a long time to get it straightened out. And anyway,
Okay.
it's working well now.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Did anyone from the group that was doing the study here for us talk to you yet?
No, no one has talked to us.
Okay.
And we will be happy to hold a special meeting to talk with anybody, just to, again, no matter who you go with, just hearing our experience, it might help you from walking into some of the same things that we did. So,
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that offer. Anyone else like to address the council? Yes, sir?
Handful of questions at you. Just for my information, has there been a
Sir,
specific
may I?
date?
Sir,
Oh.
excuse me, I'm so sorry. Can I get you to give your name and address, please?
Rick Saputo, 216 Primrose Way.
Thank you, sir.
Has there been a specific date established before which there will be no action on water? We're going to keep looking at things until
I don't think,
months?
no, I don't think a specific timeline has been laid out. It's probably going to, I think, don't intend to talk for the entire council, but my guess would be once the MTAS study comes back.
and then you're going to allow
That'd be considered, yeah.
feedback and
Sure.
Okay. Also on water, I don't recall in any of the sessions I attended any mention of how the rate base would be established for Signal Mountain. I imagine if it was the Walden's Ridge, it'd be the Walden's Ridge District combined one rate base. If it's Tennessee American, is it a rate base in Signal Mountain, or are you just thrown into the?
There's it was submitted into record, and I think it's on the website, but the last regular meeting, we did a rate projection for all three scenarios, which would be if we sold it to Walden, if we sold it to Tennessee American, or if we kept it and maintained it and ran it ourselves. So is that on the website?
believe so.
Yeah, I
think
think we
that
put that on
presentation
there,
is-
plus there's a 20-year projection of expenditures and basically worth of the system.
Can I comment on things in the
Absolutely,
agenda?
sure. You got 3 minutes, you can comment on whatever you like.
I was curious on the item abandoning right-of-way on Ohio Avenue. Was the purpose, we can talk when we get there, what the purpose for that was. Is that approved by the county? It seemed to me that that effectively landlocks a parcel of property. And what becomes of the right-of-way property?
I did not make our last agenda meeting, so I'm assuming that'll come up during that topic, so I'm unaware.
Okay. That'll do for now.
Thank you, sir.
Melissa Cantrell, 105 South Drive. Quick question. Are we looking at doing the MTAS rate study as well, the $3,000 to $5,000 one?
Again, I was not at the last work session, so I don't know what the council, I don't think they've passed anything. I don't think
I
there's,
just want to know if it's still on the table.
don't know.
I don't think there's been a decision not to do it,
Right.
but the decision was made to have them do the initial study.
I thought it was free.
That is.
That is.
Okay.
The rate study, I think, was $3,000. It wasn't that much, and they offered them both at the beginning, but they had to finish the first before they see if they want to do, if we want them to do the rate study. And
Would
that
it be
my
less
preference.
expensive if they took the rates, the projected rates we came up with and
That
then
wouldn't be a
comment
rate,
on them?
that wouldn't be a rate study.
Right, but it would be basically the same thing. They could take a look and tell us if we're right or wrong based on what we did.
Well, they charge for a rate study. It's a more involved process that they do.
Okay.
So I can tell you, I think we should do that.
I think it'd be money well spent. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the council? Thank you. We'll move on. Next on the agenda is council vacancy action. And A is discussion. Boyd, could you bring us
Yeah.
up to date on that?
If I might. The direction was to develop an application, for lack of a better term, and have that out for a period of time. Deadline is passed, and those were immediately sent out to council for review. Beyond that, there really wasn't much of a determination as to what the process would be from there, other than it would be taken up at some level, or on some level tonight. So not being sure how council might proceed, I have developed some ballots, for lack of a better term, some sheets we can use, depending on how council wants to do it. But we have that capability, but it's only at pleasure of the council if, after discussion, you choose to move forward.
So
I wasn't here during the work session, so I don't know what was discussed. Can somebody bring me up to speed?
I don't think we
No.
discussed this at all, because this is already set to be on this
Right. to
council
discuss it.
meeting.
We've just received applications. Looked over them.
Were the candidates discussed at all?
No, we didn't have it at the time. These were not in our possession at the time we had the agenda meeting.
No, we didn't distribute anything to council until the
Right.
deadline had passed, so all the council members got all the applications all at the same time. So nothing was discussed or distributed prior to that.
So we can have just an open discussion about the process now? Mayor, Mr. Mayor, is that where we are now?
Sure.
Once, are you going to make a
Is your mic
suggestion?
on, Bob?
Test.
Green. All right.
I was going to make a suggestion that we would like to have them come up and speak for 2 or 3 minutes just to hear why they would like to be a member. That was one possible scenario, and I've had chance of talking about 2 or 3 of them so far, so I haven't had a chance to talk to all of them, unless someone wanted to make a motion on a particular one.
So, count 4?
Yeah, absolutely.
Multiple ways we can go about this, but before we get to that, we don't actually have an opening yet. So, and I had a conversation with Boyd today, that it seems like, I'm just tossing this out, that the most we could possibly do tonight is nominate someone that would be voted on at a subsequent meeting when we have an opening. We can't actually vote somebody into the position tonight.
Why not?
Is that true?
I don't know that that's true or false. I think it's been stated as an opinion.
Do we have an opening now? Right.
The issue becomes whether there is any individual that has failed to maintain bona fide residency in the town for 60 consecutive days. That's when a vacancy occurs.
Right, so we don't have a vacancy yet.
But you have resolutions in here, in the packet.
Right.
And
Which,
do those say we're appointing this person when X happens?
yes, the appointment would take place the day after.
Is that acceptable? Okay.
That is an issue that is up to the council to fill a vacancy when it occurs. At this point in time, you're having a decision that you're going to have to make here at a certain time.
Is there,
Phil,
were
is
you
your
going
mic
somewhere
on?
with that?
That
Yes, that is acceptable.
Yeah, where I was going is it just seems like the logical progression for things, if we vote tonight, is that we nominate someone and then we vote on that nomination at the work session, or we have a meeting the day the vacancy becomes available. And, I mean, we could have a special meeting to vote on it.
Or if we, I mean, I'm not sure there's a huge rush either, right? We can work with 4.
Yes. It's up to this body to fill the vacancy whenever that occurs, and you can do that effective a specific date if you choose to do it tonight. If you don't want to do it effective a certain date, then you can do it whenever the vacancy occurs and it's causing you a problem.
I've had the chance to, and then I apologize, I've been out of the country for 2 weeks, and then we had to take my daughter to freshman year over out west, and just got back, but I've reached out to, I think there's 7 candidates, or 8? 6. 6? It's at least 7.
7.
It's at least 7.
8. 8.
Okay. I've reached out and I met with 3 of them, and I've talked to 2 of them, but I would like the opportunity to try to talk to the other ones I haven't reached yet. So, I don't know, maybe we put it at the work session to decide where we go from there, and that gives us an opportunity to, at least me, to talk to everybody. Has everybody else had a chance to?
No, I need to talk to a few more.
There's a few that I have not spoken to, and there's several that I already know.
You okay with that? Is that?
I wasn't clear that it was okay to talk to them, which is why we did the questionnaire from the last meeting, from something you said about perhaps pre-breaking the sunshine law by talking to them about issues that might come before the council.
Only if you're trying to get a second on your votes, or your aspect of trying to make sure you've got someone to be able to support you on a position. That's where the concern would be.
So, for instance, on the water issue that came up earlier tonight, I don't remember who it was who asked the question about when we intend to do it. I would hope we didn't do that until a new council is seated, so that the citizens have the council, almost as a referendum. And that makes me think that, and I could be in the wrong, so I'm just bringing this up, but it makes me think that I shouldn't talk to any of the prospective people who filled in about the water company in case it does come up. So, you see where I'm coming from, Phil? I'm going on your advice, just trying
Several
to
of
be
these
careful.
people have already been very vocal about their opinion, so you wouldn't need to talk to them to know the opinion. I mean, before council, several times.
Several, but not all.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you're going to make that statement, then
mean,
It just,
To me, it doesn't seem like we're ready to move on that right now. So is it okay if we
Well,
discuss this?
I really want to get clear counsel from council based on what was said at the last. I'm not trying to pin you to anything. I left confused, and I need to be not confused about this.
I have my green light on. I think I'm available here. You clearly got a public record insofar as 8 applications at this point in time, what people are saying. I don't think that's off base at all to ask individuals what they're doing. The issue and my concern would be if it's something outside of this document that you're trying to go to get information about how they might be able to vote on other issues, that could be a problem. Okay?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you.
We good to put it off till the work session? Everybody okay with that?
when's the work session?
It is, it's not on our agenda.
24th.
Friday, the 24th at 12:30? All right, no further comment?
Okay.
All right, we'll move on. Into resolutions, 9B, appoint MAC board member.
I'm sorry. I was processing what we were just doing, and I do have another question. Because Bob had a suggestion, is that something we want to plan on doing? Bob did have a suggestion that was brought up in the discussion that we didn't discuss.
Well, what
I
did
think we
you say?
just put- I asked if they could get up and speak for 3 minutes about, their reason for running, but we were tabled it to the agenda meeting, so I guess we could talk about it then.
That, or we could, or I think part of what you said is somebody nominates somebody and you,
Or somebody
You
could
go from
nominate
there.
somebody and go from
Well,
there.
I think that at
I would
some
not be
point-
comfortable if it was done during a work session. I think it needs to be done during a regular meeting, the final vote, whatever,
Well, then we're
whatever that
pushing it
takes
off even
place.
more. I mean, at some point, I think we need to make a decision, just like we did at the judge. Do your due diligence, talk to all the people. They've answered questions. I don't think we need to do another, stand up and say the exact same reasons that they're running, or not running, but want to fill the position. It's listed in the,
Are you
in their
saying you
application.
want to move now, or?
No, I'm fine moving it to the work session. I just feel like at some point, let's make the decision and move on to business. It's a 2-month
Can I make
seat.
a comment? Just
Absolutely.
remember, you have an election in November, so you don't have unlimited time, or the appointment is sort of moot, so,
Right.
anyway.
Yeah, so
There you go.
that's why the direction I
That's
was
my
leaning.
point, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, are we done? I think Bob's suggestions, is a good one. I don't know if everyone's here tonight, so that's a possibility. If we do it at a work session, it's harder for people to come. It's harder for people to hear the potential folks. So, I don't know. And I would like to toss in one other thing for council to consider for when we do this. I think to do a ranked voting would make it so that you're more likely to get someone that everyone agrees with more. In a ranked voting, you would, if you have 6 people or 8 people, you would put 8 as your first choice, 7 as your second choice, 6 as your third choice, and you can rank them all the way down, and then it's easy to add up the numbers. And
I think that's way too complicated. I think we just need to nominate someone and vote and move on. It's a 2-month seat. This is not a 2-year commitment. Literally, by the time we get to that, we might as well not appoint anyone. Sorry, I just think we vote like we have voted on every other issue.
Can we discuss
And we
and
can do it
decide
at the
that at
work
our
session.
work session?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all good suggestions. We've got 3 different ways of handling it now. Let's decide then and go forward.
could we discuss it now and determine what would be the best way to do that?
Sure.
What do you think?
Until I talk to all the candidates, I really don't know. I think the simplest way is for somebody to nominate, make a nomination. If that nomination passes, that's great. And that's just simple and to the point.
There are some disadvantages to that, in that
Sure there are.
it makes it more political. if people vote on a piece of paper and then all the numbers are added up, it's fairer, and any of us might not get our first choice, but we're more likely to get a choice that more people think is a decent choice. If we went to, as is happening in places, if you go to a ranked voting system, you tend to get a more reasonable choice if you don't get your first choice. And are we deciding, to Dick's point, are we deciding to put this off until the work session?
You said you had ballots drawn up, or?
The charter, if you're looking at that, just says that if a vacancy occurs on the council, a majority vote of all the remaining members of the council may fill the vacancy for the balance of the unexpired term or until the next regular town election. So it's going to be 4 of you making that decision about who fills the position. That's it.
I'd like to make a motion that we vote by ballot with a ranked voting system. I'm not saying now, I'm saying when we do it.
Is there a second? Motion dies? What happens?
Yes, sir. Motion is,
So we'll discuss and determine at the work session?
I make a motion during the work session, we nominate a candidate and we vote on it. Them. He or she.
I'm fine with that. I just think it should happen during a regular meeting.
So a month from now?
Yeah. Spots open at that point. Don't have to wait for anything.
There's
I
a motion
don't-
on the table.
What was it?
Did he second it?
No. I said, I made a motion that we nominate a
I'll second
replacement
it
at the
for
work
the-
session and vote.
I'll second it for the,
Discussion.
discussion. And my comment is, I think it should happen at a regular meeting where more people can attend. So I'm perfectly fine if it goes there, but then the actual resolution's not approved until the next regular meeting. I mean, it adds an extra step, I know, but I just feel strongly it's got to be done where more people can be there.
Well, we're not taking public input. We're just voting on a candidate.
Okay, fair
That's-
point.
I mean, I'm in no hurry to fill it, but I also think, to Dick's point, I mean, at some point, I think we're over-complicating this decision, as we do on many other issues.
All right, we have a first and a second. Is there further discussion on that?
And this would be by nomination as opposed to a ranking?
Ranking system, yeah. Like we did for judge. That was a very simple process. We all talked to the candidates, we came to a meeting, we nominated someone, and we voted.
Any further comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed.
I'm sorry, Dr. Spalding?
I voted, I didn't do it loud enough, yes,
An
I'll
aye?
support it.
Okay, thank you.
I'll support that motion.
Thank you, sir.
So
And
we,
I'm assuming that Vice Mayor G is abstaining on that one.
you abstaining? 311, motion passes, so come prepared to make a nomination at the work session. Next on the agenda is resolutions. We already covered 9A. Next would be the appointment of MAC board member. This is there only one, or do we have to?
There's,
or we-
yes, sir, there's just one.
Okay, so we don't have to decide. Resolution number, can you give me
2018-50.
-50, 2018-50, resolution appointing Ellis Gardner as a member of the Town of Signal Mountains Mountain Art Community Board. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion, we approve.
One second was Dick. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Where are you? Thank you for being willing to serve.
Yeah, we're scraping floors this weekend, Alice, see you there.
Next is authorizing payment of Information Technologies LLC Law Enforcement Records Management. Resolution number 2018-51, a resolution authorizing payment to Information Technologies LLC in the amount of $11,847 for annual system service and software, including law enforcement records management, personnel management, duty rosters, and interface with Tennessee Incident-Based Reporting System for mobile and LAN workstations for use by the police department. Boyd?
If, over the course of the last several months, you guys have seen presentations on the technology advances in the police department, and this is basically the system that runs all of that. As we implemented this, when there wasn't full implementation and we weren't in a full fiscal year, the amounts did not rise to the level of needing council authorization, but we're going into the first full year of implementation and first full fiscal year. So the amount on that is $11,847. We'll note that for 2 years, including this one, we have gotten donations from county commission to assist with that. So the actual expense to the town is more in line, I believe around $7,000. So this will be partially covered with a donation.
Before I get a motion on this, I think it's important, Chief, if you wouldn't mind stepping to the mic and just giving us an overview of all that we've accomplished in the last 2 years as far as upgrades in technology, and this feeds right into it. Just a brief, not too long. Yeah, not that you would.
Troy's not up here.
No more than 3 minutes. But it's good stuff. In fact, they did a news story on how well we're doing as far as technology is concerned. So if you could hit that real quick before we go into this.
Well, basically, going back about a year and a half, 2 years, all of our reports are still handwritten, hand-stored, hand-searched, very cumbersome, very time-consuming. I couldn't respond to citizens' inquiry on particular areas or streets or what have you without taking 2 or 3 days to dig that up. We did a research on the records management system. We came up with the Omnigo ITI system. We were approached by Mr. Fields from the county commission that basically funded that first year for us, gave us $7,000. That was our baby steps getting started. That same year, you folks approved the computer technologies for in the car and the routers that would allow the cars to communicate with the records management system and allow them to do their reports in the car and actually send them to the station over here, which immediately put them into a searchable database. So this year, Mr. Fields gave us another $7,000, which covered, and like both said, all but about $5,000 of it. And we're up and running now with the AT&T FirstNet system with our cell phone service through the cars. We were the first ones in the state to sign on to this federally backed, federally funded program that allows us to have each one of those cars can act as its own hotspot in the time of a crisis up here. If everybody else's cell phone systems went down, ours would still have priority over it. If, for instance, that's something big and everybody gets on the phone, it'll crash the system. Ours will stay up, and we could literally run the town off of the cars. So we've gotten a lot of notoriety through the state with that. We've had what's the name of the department? Brentwood and Bell Mead both have been down here looking at our system. So is Cleveland, another county up in West Tennessee. So we've had about 5 or 6 departments now coming to see what we're doing to try to emulate what we're doing. So we've come a long way, and we tried to plan it to start with so that everything talked and everything worked seamlessly, that we wouldn't have to patch this and that, and so far, so good.
Can I summarize that real quick?
Yes, sir.
About 2 years ago, we were kind of in the Stone Ages as far as everything was concerned, and through your leadership and Boyd's and some help from Officer Kennedy and some of the officers in there, we've come to be one of the best in the state now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Can I get a motion?
Make a motion to approve?
First by Councilwoman Speak, second by Dr. Spaulding. Any discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries 5-0. Absolutely.
It doesn't really say precisely what this is for. And my question is not to question what it's for so much as to get a gist of where this takes us in the process. With the expenditure of this fund, does this complete our capabilities from an outlay standpoint?
Yes, sir. We've already had it up and running. This is going on our second year. This is the first year that we've fully funded it and integrated it with the computers in the cars and the AT&T system. So this is icing on the cake that gets us moving forward into the future.
But we're not dealing with, some officers have it and some officers
everybody's-
don't. Everybody's got the same.
Yes, sir.
So now this is just lifting all boats up to the same level.
Yes, sir. All the patrol cars have them. Myself, the detective, and captain don't have them. We don't need them. I couldn't justify spending that money for us because they're the ones that are out in the cars answering the calls and doing the reports and interacting with the citizens.
But as far as this capability now that we have created, that you have created in your
Yes, sir.
your group of officers, is that it? As far as, I mean, technology evolves and, quicker than,
Well, the system that we've planned it now is for 5 years.
okay.
With the exception of small things and updates as we go, we should be good to go.
Where,
With this system, actually, it's unlimited because they constantly update us literally on a daily basis. They've been super good to work with. We can call them and they'll call right back, or we get them immediately. And they'll spend 2 or 3 hours on the phone with us if we have an issue that we want to change or whatever. So it's cloud-based, so we didn't have to spend money on servers and hardware here. And it's double redundantly backed up on the East Coast and West Coast. So
Cool. Thank you,
And-
I appreciate it.
And this is an annual cost that we'll be looking at. This is the management and software and the
Okay.
operation of
Maybe
the
that's what I was
system.
asking.
Yeah, it's-
The
okay.
hardware's all in place,
There'll be an
everything's in.
ongoing cost.
yeah,
And-
it's installed up and running like we want it, like we designed it. All the hardware was purchased last year, so now all we have is maintenance.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That was well over your 3 minutes, but well worth it.
Yeah, thank you, I
Thank you,
appreciate
Chief.
it.
Next on the agenda is Resolution 9D, which is Resolution number 2018-52, a resolution authorizing the Centennial Celebration Subcommittee of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Town of Signal Mountain to solicit and accept donations of private funds to be used to fund Centennial Celebration activities as approved by the Town Council of the Town of Signal Mountain. Boyd, can you, there's a lot of whereas and what fors in that
Right.
one.
This has come up a couple of times. Council initially addressed it, and I believe it was a session when we didn't have a full complement, and the determination was made to not do this. Then it was brought back up, and there was further discussion, and in researching and conferring with Mr. Noblet, the determination was that, if council chose to do this, they would have to provide the authority to the committee to solicit and accept funds and to enter into an agreement with the community foundation. And then in doing that, there was a need to outline how those things would work and what the responsibilities would be. So I was asked to basically put that together. Obviously, give it to Phil for review, and if council chooses to move forward with it, this would be the
Mechanism.
framework for which.
Are you in agreement with
Yes.
everything? Okay, because that's your
I hope
baby.
it does go forward because they do have funds that are ready to be deposited that they can't really do anything with until we approve the mechanism.
So they're going to the community foundation rather than into the.
Which they have a separate account that's trackable and all that good stuff. Okay, all right.
And there is a specific Tennessee statute that authorizes y'all to make contributions to a fund if you choose to do so, but it's got to be a nonprofit entity there. If a fund is, any money is provided by the town, then there's going to have to be auditing in association with that. That's why a nonprofit is allowed, and the state comptroller's office is provided the ability to do an audit.
And the community foundation's set up
Yes, to
specifically
do that.
for this sort of circumstance.
Yes.
But
All right.
I would stress that we did discuss that while the town has funds budgeted for the centennial celebration, that those funds would not be transferred
No.
to the community foundation. They would be maintained and managed by the town.
This is purely for outside donations from folks that
Correct.
want to sponsor and help out with
It specifically says.
and
for
hopefully
private funds.
minimize the town's need to put money in.
It does not include sale of items and income, just donation.
Right.
Right now, yeah, donations.
What are they
And-
going to do on that? Is that going to be strictly through town? T-shirts or bumper stickers or any of that mess?
My position is that the town doesn't need to
Be in that
be a
business?
vendor.
And they're aware of that.
If we purchase T-shirts or mugs or something, I think that's something that the town gives away as door prizes and things like that. We're not in the business of selling merchandise. I think we should keep it that way, in my opinion.
So if somebody does, then it's their, they basically become an independent,
Reseller,
yeah,
retailer.
they do their
But
own.
we have control over the logo and everything. don't
Right,
we?
we still
Yes.
maintain control over the logo.
So we have to okay anybody that does that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
And one thing I will point out is that one of the additions that Phil made was that this activity would still be subject to review and oversight, and in this case by council, since it's, the council formed the committee, and the council's giving this authority to the committee, then I think they would need to report to council, and there'd be some oversight from.
So we can continue to get reports at our agenda meetings, work sessions.
It's to be done monthly on here by the last day of, a business day of each month.
Okay.
assuming there's a balance at the end of the festivities, what happens to the balance, if there is such a thing?
Well, they wanted to make sure that this was dissolved, that this didn't linger, and that it wouldn't be, they wanted to turn all monies to the town to make sure that
Okay.
was,
I think the town, we can work close enough too to be able to get them to direct them to pay as much as we can.
this arrangement sunsets on the end of the centennial.
Yeah, okay.
We should probably be discussing this after a motion is made, so can I get a motion on this?
Take a motion.
Second.
We got a first and second. Now further discussion.
I don't see a sunset on here. I have three questions. I don't see a sunset on here. Or maybe it says until,
The committee sunsets at the end of 2019.
the committee's
The
already set
committee,
to
not the
sunset.
resolution.
What does it cost us from a percentage standpoint to collect the money and put it into the community foundation? 'Cause I'm sure they charge a fee for that, as opposed to just the town setting aside funds.
What do they charge them at? Do they charge?
I don't know, that's something separate from,
But I mean, do you
I
know?
don't think they do.
no, I don't know anything about
think
that.
they charge.
They,
Yeah.
they do
There's a fee.
charge
No,
a
there's
fee.
a fee. There's,
Barb,
know what that-
do you know?
It's 7%
Thank you.
of all donations.
Ooh, that's a lot.
It is high.
Barb, are you sure it's 7 now? I heard it was going to that, but have they made that change?
When they talked to us several months ago, they were going to that, and I believe they've already gone to
All right?
It is what it is.
Any other discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. Next on the agenda is resolution, or item 9E, which is authorizing additional funds. This is resolution number 2018-53, resolution approving additional funds for the contract with Higgins Construction for Fern Trail drainage improvements in the amount of $26,608.40. Boyd?
I apologize, I don't have my notes with me, but I can give you a nutshell. We approved a stormwater drainage improvement project for Fern Trail. It's $56,295. When they got into that, cutting into the road and the subgrade beneath that, basically it was horrendous. They literally found tree stumps under the roads. Cliffs that looked like they just kind of graded off the hill, smoothed it out, and put the road on top of it. When they started digging in and getting the trenches set, they just kept collapsing. They would run into things they would have to dig out. So the project just grew and grew. This is a scenario that no matter who the contractor was, they would run into this exact same thing. And it just grew to the point that all of the expenses are associated with materials. More fill, more stone, more concrete, more asphalt. By the time they got it out and got it stabilized and they could put it back in right, the project just grew considerably. By all accounts, the work that this contractor was exceptional, and they handled it. This was also during a period when we were having some of the torrential rains. There was simply nothing we could do about it but fix it and make it right, and that's what they did. Ultimately, the additional material costs are represented in this additional cost for the contract.
Was this in the original Fern Trail or an extension of Fern?
Down at near the cul-de-sac, down off the hill.
Can I get a motion so we can go into discussion?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Who'd you get on that?
Dick's first,
I got
Amy second.
Councilmember Spalding is the first and Councilmember Speak is the second.
All right.
My microphone is.
Further discussion? That's a 47% increase. I mean, that's ridiculously, because we
And
usually
it's-
build a contingency in there too, so it blew through the contingency and,
This is all material, based on the bid unit prices.
Loretta, you happy with their work? Are you happy with their work? Because of oil? Yeah. Any further discussion on this?
If I might, I believe that this will have to come back later as a budget amendment. There is sufficient funds at this time.
Right, we can cover it with, and this is stormwater. This is stormwater fund.
Comes out of stormwater.
So we have the funds to cover it, but we will make an adjustment.
It's not, which means it comes out of, for anybody that wants to know, it comes out of a separate budget. We have a separate stormwater budget. It does not affect the town general budget. Any more discussion?
Well, only in that the stormwater funds are provided by funds transferred from the general fund.
Correct.
Essentially,
Well,
it
and,
does.
no, it's
No,
from the tax
no.
on their water bill. Or not your
There
tax,
are
but there's a
stormwater
stormwater
fees.
fees.
That's
that
right, there are,
generate-
okay.
And we have, our balance in
correct.
stormwater is what? Probably
I do not. have
1 point something million?
that. I don't think
No, I
it's
don't think it's
that
that
high.
much. But we're
Significant,
fine.
right. Any other comments?
Need a change order on this.
Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0. 2018-53. Next, we move on to public hearing for FY 2018-2019 budget. So we have to open up for, accepting the budget for the year is an ordinance, and it requires 2 public votes plus a public hearing. And this is the hearing piece before we take a final vote. Would anybody like to make any comments on the budget? Don't all jump at once.
I think you did a great job, Chris. Thank you for all the work that you put in.
And I'd like to say that your estimates were right on target.
Absolutely.
And there wasn't any issue about those numbers.
Thank you. Seeing none, public hearing's closed. Next, we're going to have a public hearing on rezoning, which is, what?
We aren't going on to vote on the budget?
It comes under ordinances.
It's separate, okay.
Yeah. We have to have that before, that's part of the ordinance process. Public hearing on rezoning, 1161 Ridgeway Avenue, from LDR to MDR. Would anyone like to comment on this issue? We're in public hearing right now for that. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and move on to ordinances. Under Section 12A, ordinances, the budget, 2018-2019 budget, second reading. Let me find it. An ordinance number 2018-8, correct? An ordinance of the Town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019, hereinafter known as the FY 2018-2019 budget ordinance. Can I get a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
We have a first and second. Discussion.
Yes. I think the way this works, Boyd brings a budget. Boyd meets with his departments and brings the budgets in for each one of the departments, and then he presents that to us, and the department heads talk to us. But the responsibility is basically on the town manager at that point, because he's met with the departments and he's saying that this represents what we need to run this department. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to make sure I understand it. That's all accurate. I feel like well, it doesn't matter what I feel like. What happens after that, when we sit down, is council members can say, I think we should, set some funds aside for this, or whatever things that we might bring to the table as council members. It's at that point, that's not the town manager's responsibility, because he works for us. It's our boss, in essence, is citizenry, based on the way it works. And I'm still a little concerned that we did not, on a line item basis on the things that we suggested, have discussions, public discussions in front of the town on these things. And there's a lot, and at this point, the budget's going to pass, I'm quite sure of that, but there are a couple of things I'm still a little concerned about. And one is that we've set aside a donation for MEF. And the other one might also be the greatest buy for exercise equipment that we could ever have. But I think when a council spends taxpayer money that's going to a citizen, even if it's a great deal, which this appears to be, though I haven't seen the equipment, it deserves public discussion as well. So again, I'm sure the budget's going to pass tonight, but I'd like to understand from council why we think it's appropriate for those two items as
We have a
set aside
$10 million
money.
investment in that high school. No other community can say that. And if we don't have the ability to help out when we can, I think this was a perfect example. It may be that it doesn't need to be funded, but making the making that gesture, I think, is prudent as opposed to not. And that's number one. Number two, 3 or 4 different people looked at this gym situation, and there wasn't any issues associated with that. If it just happened to be a private citizen giving us, I mean, we get private citizens making donations all the time, and/or, in some cases, some kind of reciprocity. So I don't see there was an issue. I think that Chris hit this nail on the head with what was, no one that I know of, any other mayor has ever taken a budget and gone through it as well as Chris has, and given us that prediction that that money was there because it was underestimated revenues. And so I don't see a problem with it.
Chris wasn't aware that we were not calculating the, what was the particular budget item that was going in twice to the,
Expenditures on the sanitation fund
yeah,
transfer.
none of us were aware of that. That was a completely different
I
thing.
make a motion that we approve this.
Sorry,
budget.
I think we already have, haven't we?
We do,
Yeah,
we have
we're
a
in
first and a
discussion. We're in
second on the
discussion.
table
You
already.
can call the question.
So none of us were aware of that, and that turned out to be an accounting thing that really didn't have anything to do with the other stuff that was on the table. I'm legitimately concerned. I am now an accidental PTA member. I didn't realize that that was going to work that way, but I'm thrilled to be doing it. So I care about the schools. My grandson I walked into school this morning because he was afraid to go to kindergarten, and I suspect.
Then if
I
you
did the
care
same
about the
thing.
But I mean,
schools, you're okay with the donation, because that donation is paying for a teacher that Hamilton County doesn't pay for. So I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I didn't get to finish.
I know, but I have a real hard time when you say you're for the schools, but picking out a $10,000 set-aside amount of money to MEF, when we've given hundreds of thousands of dollars to other things that you champion.
May I finish?
You may.
I really care about the schools, and I care about MEF, and hope to get involved in fundraising with MEF myself. I'm concerned that when we, as a council, begin to set aside money when there hasn't been a specific request made to us, that we could actually hurt MEF, and we don't want to do that. That's a legitimate concern that we haven't discussed and haven't talked through. We've just had pushback against even having the discussion, as if there's something negative going on, and there's not. I'm really concerned about that.
Well, I think it shows support from the council, and that's my feeling.
And I appreciate you sharing that.
Further discussion?
Well, it was your suggestion, Chris. I'd like to know, why do you think we should set aside money when we haven't been asked for money?
We did something very similar with the SRO. We weren't asked for money for an SRO, but we decided that was important for the security of our kids, and I championed that as well. And I championed this because MEF needed an insurance because they were underfunded for paying for the 14 teachers that they currently fund, and they were going to have to cut art teachers and STEM teachers from the elementary school, from both elementary schools, unless they had that money committed. Now, all this does is it's specifically for those. If they raise the money, they don't need it. But before they could say that we're going to continue to fund one of these 14 positions, they needed to have an assurance that the money was potentially there.
Did they tell us
We
that?
just, can I?
No, I'm not trying to interrupt. I'm trying to understand.
Yes, they told us that.
At a council meeting somewhere or something?
No, in my conversations with them.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Barrett, you're involved in MEF. Are you aware of them asking for money?
Yeah. It was very public, but by us at least backing it up, they go ahead. I don't think we're ever going to spend this money for it, but by us saying and setting it aside, they could go ahead and make sure that our elementary kids had art teachers, which I think are instrumental to kids in elementary school, and STEM teachers, and they weren't going to have to cut those positions. We just turned around and gave $500,000 to the MAC. For $9,000, if it even gets spent, we're going to affect a whole lot more people in those kids getting art classes than we are there, and I can't even believe it's a discussion item.
Well,
It's a
Bob hit
discussion
the nail
item.
on the head. We have a $10 million investment in this school. $9,000 is not too much to ask.
It's a discussion item because that's what we're supposed to
No,
do.
I understand. I mean, you claim to be a supporter of the arts and a supporter of the schools. This is a no-brainer. This is, we are committing funds so they could say yes to 2 or 3 positions that they were going to have to let go.
I'll not challenge anyone's integrity on what they support and what they don't support, and I wish you guys wouldn't do that as well. I think that we need to have these discussions and have the courage to talk about them. And in the future, it would be wonderful if we did hear.
It's the
what-
same
what the-
discussion we had during the budget.
I'm going
that
to
whole
call the
budget meeting.
question.
All right, we have a question called. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Question. What are we voting on? Are we voting
That was
on
the budget.
calling the question? or are
Second
we calling
reading.
on
Second reading of the budget.
Second reading of the budget.
I'm sorry, can I pull
I thought we
y'all?
had- I thought
Let's
I'm
go.
not sure who voted.
I was a yes.
Yes.
I thought we had
Yes.
voted to call the question. Yes?
Amy called the question.
I
Amy called the
I
question,
know,
which
but-
means we have to go right to the vote.
Yeah. Give me a minute to clarify.
We did not have a second on the motion to call the question, though.
Oh,
We do
okay.
have, and we have to vote to call the question.
You
One
normally-
person
Right.
can't call the
Yes.
question.
That's
So
what that
I
vote
saying.
was.
So that,
Good catch,
okay.
you're correct.
so
You
where
called the
are-
question.
Call the question.
Help me
Is
out.
there a
Where are
second?
I'll
There's a
second.
motion. Okay,
Okay, I'm sorry, who seconded?
I did.
Thank you.
now,
Now we
Now,
vote
vote on
whether or
calling
not.
the question, which is what I thought that was. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm abstaining.
And one abstain.
401 on that. Question's been called and approved. All those in favor of approving the second reading of the budget ordinance, say aye.
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 Any opposed? 5-0.
May I ask a related question?
Yes, sir.
In the past, when we've had continuation budgets,
Do we have to undo the continuation budget?
no. I'd just like to clarify and get permission. The raises that were funded for employees, any objection to making those retroactive to July 1st?
I have no problem with that at all.
I have no objection.
Thank you.
Would you feel more comfortable with the vote on that? Or are you
No, I'm
okay?
fine.
Okay.
Now, this budget ordinance is effective July 1st, so that's what he's referring to, that they were paid based upon available funds.
All right. Next item on ordinances is rezoning of 1161 Ridgeway, LDR to MDR, second reading. Can I get a motion? Let me read it first. Do I have to sign both these?
Yes, sir, please.
It's the same
One goes to the state,
state,
and one
one
we
goes
keep
to-
for our
okay.
records.
Mr. Fisher, perfect timing. This is ordinance number 2018-07, an ordinance to rezone parcel 108AD034 from low-density residential district to medium-density residential district. Can I get a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Can I get a second? A second by Dr. Spalding. Discussion.
Did we ever figure out, is this the one by the recycling,
At the post office.
by the post office?
Right.
And did we ever straighten out parking?
Yes, it was approved on first reading with the amendment that the maximum number of parking spaces was removed, but it does have a maximum of 2 parking spaces shall be allowed in the front of the primary structure. All the other parking has to be to the side or rear.
Robert, is that okay?
Is that
Did you hear-
okay?
Did you hear that? You're good with that? Okay, very good.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? I'm abstaining. 401. Next is, this is second reading of this ordinance number 2018-06. Is that right, Carol?
That is correct.
an ordinance abandoning a portion of the right-of-way known as Ohio Avenue in Signal Mountain, Tennessee. Can I get a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Amy? Discussion? No discussion?
Given the fact that there was a previous question about this, if you don't mind, I would like to.
Please, please.
This is the dead-end portion of unopened right-of-way for Ohio Avenue. I think the lot that appears by the maps, for lack of a better term, that may have been included is not landlocked. 613 that is next to 614 Ohio is actually 613 Georgia. It fronts a different road, so there is access to all properties. Adjoining property owners have been contacted and had no objection. Basically, this will increase the size of two properties and make one more buildable. It doesn't limit access to any of the adjoining properties. As I've said before, I tend to shy away from and not advocate these, but in this case, there really didn't seem to be any issue with it at all. There's no potential connectivity that we'd be losing or anything like that. Plat has been drafted that provides an easement for a small section of water line that's there. It seems to be a good scenario for all the adjacent properties.
This doesn't affect the sewer easement that's there, right?
No,
That
it does
remains.
not. So this, in essence, if anything, it creates a little better scenario for the town as the properties would, I think, become ultimately more valuable.
Any discussion? You really can't. Thank you, though. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm abstaining from that one as well. That was second reading on that, Carol, so it is 2018-06, right?
Correct.
Next, we have a rezoning processed first reading. I need to find a copy of it. Got it. So there's no number to this ordinance yet. That'll be assigned, that's assigned during the last reading. An ordinance to amend Article 18 of the Signal Mountain zoning ordinance. Can somebody go over this? Phil?
In general terms, I will, and then turn it over to Phil. This is something that the Planning Commission brought up and initiated to clarify and give more detail to the process by which zoning requests are made and handled. It actually has gone through the Planning Commission a couple of times. They went through the basic version that primarily addressed their responsibilities on review. Phil added sections relative to the town council's responsibilities and how that works. At the work session, we did discuss this and go through it, and there were a couple changes requested, and those have been made. Primarily that in section 1802.08, where it lays out the time limits for presentations, rebuttals, and such. At the end of that initial paragraph, however, time periods may be extended at the discretion of the chair, was added to provide latitude for that. The item C there, the wording was changed, so it now reads, discussion between council members should be held in good order, and all present shall conduct themselves in keeping with Robert's rules and the town's adopted rules of decorum. which is a little less aggressive wording than was initially there. So beyond that, in terms of the actual content, Phil was largely engaged in that, so I'll defer anything further to him.
Sure. I think I have the green light on. Okay. The method of procedure is in your town code. It's authorized under state law to make amendments to whenever you're doing these things. There are specific requirements as to public hearings under state law and how it's to be held. I was trying to make sure, at least in your rules of procedure, how regulations can come before the Planning Commission initially here. Any department, agency, or government, or anyone, a property owner, can make a petition to get a rezoning to occur. It has to be referred to the Planning Commission first. That's a requirement under state law for a recommendation to either approve or disapprove. And if they recommend either approval or disapproval, it still comes to council at that point in time, because y'all are the legislative body that makes decisions on any zoning matters on here. You get a recommendation from the Planning Commission, but you have to do that. 180203, 45 days, it's trying to make sure you don't just put things off forever. You got a time period within which to make decisions on those proposed changes unless someone either requests withdrawal or a deferral is granted to the petitioner by the town council, but need to make decisions fairly quickly on that. The 137203 requirement under 80204 is state law requirement that you have to have at least 15 days prior notice of a public hearing. That's the reason we hold public hearing on any zoning ordinance changes that are required by state law. So any applications that are submitted have to be done at a specific time, and it's supposed to be at least 60 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting before it can occur. So it's setting forth a schedule for presenting things so they don't just suddenly appear at the last second. And applications that are looking at things on here, this ordinance requires a site plan, something to look at so that the Planning Commission can make decisions on things that are actually written up in front of them here. That site plan, it says here, shall be prepared by an engineer, a landscape architect, or a surveyor, so at least they've got something that is to scale in connection with the application on there. And there are requirements under your code here, under 8020504, for posting of signs so that people will know around the property what is being requested for rezoning. Has to be done at least 14 days prior to the Planning Commission. The signs will at least give people notice, and I don't think we usually have a problem with people actually knowing whenever there's a zoning request done, but it's supposed to be up. It has to be posted no earlier than 5 days after an application is submitted, and it has to stay up during the time that a hearing is going to take place. So if the sign is down, that's a reason for the Planning Commission to delay that meeting until the next time, whenever they can prove that the signage is completed. So bottom line, at least on the public comment period here in front of the Planning Commission, I think it's important for y'all to realize that's the stage whenever recommendations are being reviewed, and there is a time limit for public comment at that point in time of 30 minutes. So there is, each speaker is given 3 minutes of time and a 30-minute time frame. And we're talking about time, manner, place restrictions, what the Supreme Court has approved in connection with public meetings. Time, manner, and place means that there can be some restriction on the length of time associated with matters so that all of these folks can actually be able to get the business that is needed to be done. I think we talked about one of the meetings that we had here that we had a great number of people that were speaking. I don't have a problem with doing that, and in fact, you have the authority as the chair to grant extended time periods at the discretion of the chair. But the issue of not being able to get through multiple items because we're just going on and on and on is another problem. So there is a public comment time period in front of the Planning Commission of 30 minutes, 3 minutes per side. Rules and restrictions of the Planning Commission control how that works. If something has been requested and is denied, and it's already been turned down at one point in time, you can't refile for a period of 9 months after that occurs. That's a reasonable restriction on how quickly someone can do something that's already been heard. Also, under the power to zone conditionally, we put that provision in to make sure that it's clear under your authority under state law. And then last but not least, the thing that Dunn was talking about, I believe, is 180208, which is a section that talks about how long do you get to talk. And the applicant, in order to try to speed these things through, sometimes is a 7-minute time period for oral presentation, because hopefully that has already been presented to the Planning Commission, has been in a public process format so that it can be done in a simple manner. There is an opportunity for opposition for 9 minutes on that end of it. And then there is 2 additional minutes for rebuttal. So that is a total of 18 minutes per case that would be devoted to a matter for public comment. And then there's discussion for the council members. And it's a question about how long does each one of these cases last. If a case is going to last 2 hours, it's very difficult for you to get any other action done during your meeting. If you have at least a time frame set aside of about 30 minutes per case, hopefully that will get you through. But that's the reason that recommendation is in this ordinance. That is the same procedure that would be followed if any individual was making a rezoning request in the city of Chattanooga or in front of Hamilton County here for rezoning.
And public hearings are still part of the process?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure this is a change, but I know I like what I see there, because it says, any proposed change, this is 1802.02.
Is your mic on, Dick?
Oh, I'm sorry. 1802.
Dash 02.
Point 02. It's not a, yeah, .02. Any proposed change or amendment must be referred to the Planning Commission for approval or disapproval. If the Planning Commission recommends approval or disapproval, it shall state the reasons for recommendation in writing.
Good.
And I think that is a significant improvement in our process. Can I go back? Are you open for a question?
Oh, yes, sir.
Because I want to dispel the notion that we're kind of trying to limit debate.
Yes, sir.
The idea is to have the right debate in the right place.
Yes.
And the idea was to have the technical debate occur in the Planning Commission, and leave the politics aside, and get the zoning regulations and rules and what the request is and how it fits and all that taken care of under the auspices of the Planning Commission. And usually that is pretty cut and dry, in terms of usually. When it gets interesting is when you introduce the political aspects of it. And the intent was to leave that component open. And it says at the discretion of the chair.
Yes, sir.
And I wonder, I didn't think about this until you just read it again.
Yes, sir.
I wonder if that leaves the chair with too much power to limit discussion. If the discretion still needs to be there to allow a complete, and as Ned points out, have everybody make their case,
Yes, sir.
for or against. But that puts the power to stop it in
As
the
a
hand of one
solution, why don't you?
And so I think that needs to be a council decision.
That's what I'm saying, as a
Yeah.
solution, if we put in there that if there is going to be a change to what's in here, the council will determine ahead of time.
We can save a majority vote of the council if you want
Majority,
to do,
yeah.
if you wish to do
I
that.
think that's a better way.
Majority vote of the council present.
Okay.
I think our charter, referring to public speakers at a meeting, I think our charter says something about, for instance, at a work session, that anytime we have a meeting, that the public can address us unless we change that by vote of the council at the beginning of the meeting.
But council
This is-
controls the meeting, though, Dan. I mean,
I'm agreeing
and
with you.
we can establish schedules and we can establish rules.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
And that's what we're trying to do here. But
Yes.
leave the option
Yeah,
to
that's,
color outside the lines if we want to.
yeah, I'm just saying, this is similar to the way it mentions the way
Yeah.
that we deal with the.
Okay.
with the
Outside of
public.
this,
What do you
outside of
think?
this
I'm
issue,
sorry. I know we did this, we went through this discussion and you changed it to what we wanted.
That's correct.
And now we want something else, I
That is
think.
perfectly fine.
I've another one also, but when we're done with
Okay.
this part.
not a huge rush into this, is there? Do we have something coming up that's going to affect it?
I mean, that change.
I'd rather get it right.
That change can be made now. I mean, that,
I have one.
so that wouldn't necessarily stop a vote for tonight.
Okay.
But to answer your question, no, there's no rush.
But basically, I like what we've got here. I think this is a significant improvement.
At the last planning commission, since an application has to be submitted at least 60 days prior to the planning commission meeting, excuse me, we had the discussion of why we changed it from 12 months to 9 months. And then the 60 days makes it be 11. And so, Boyd, if I remember correctly, the planning commission talked about changing it to 10 months so that it still equals the year. Remember, we had that discussion about what is the consensus, and the consensus was 10 and not 9, and that's not reflected in this. Because we were trying to figure out how to resolve that conversation, and so we asked what the consensus was.
Right. You know, I think you're accurate in that, but that hasn't been discussed with council.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Thus it wasn't changed in this document.
Gotcha, okay. So that's why I'm bringing it up. So the planning commission's thought was, so that we aren't changing it from a year to 9 months, and we didn't really ask for that. What we asked for, which was really important, and thank you for the work on this, Phil, for the cleaning up a lot of it. The two things that surprised me as a planning commission member, and I think the things that came up was, why did we change from 12 to 9, and why did we mess with the amount of time? I don't think the planning commission asked for that to be something. We weren't worried about how long the meetings were taking. We were just worried that the process for people applying was maybe putting some constraints in that could cause us problems.
So there has been a tendency to let the discussion in the planning commission drift beyond the pure request and the rules and the regulations that apply to that request, and let members of the community speak. And some of those comments tend to be advocacy or disadvocacy positions, more political in nature than dealing with the heart of the matter. And the idea was just to simply separate the two discussions and put them in the right place. And I happen to agree with that. I think the planning commission needs to be the planning commission's meeting and not have public input.
Sure.
Unless they have a public meeting and invite public input for a specific situation. That's what we do. That's what the council does, is to deal with the citizen requests and citizen,
Right, but
in my opinion.
Do you recall the council or the planning commission asking for it to be changed from 12 months to 9 months?
Well, I thought it was required by something else. I really did. I missed that one.
Specifically, anyone that would make an application to the Chattanooga-Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission here, and all your developers or people that are working back and forth in building projects would be following those rules, and that's what those rules are. Those rules are a 9-month deferral, and if they are turned down, they can't bring anything back for a 9-month time frame. The town, in that regard, has a 12-month period beforehand. If you want to go with a 12-month, you can. It's just different than everybody else in Hamilton County.
Okay, I knew, that's
Phil,
where
is
it
your
came
mic
from.
on?
I knew there was an outside influence on that number. and that's where it
Mike,
came from.
sorry, it says it's on, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I've got,
Was it coming through?
anybody else got something?
Well, I think we need to, I don't know if we need to vote, but the consensus of the planning commission was that it should be changed to 10 months. Because that works with the 60 days change in there, effectively still keeping it at a year.
I don't object.
What was the other
So,
change?
huh?
What was the other change that we could handle in this?
It says the council, at the discretion of the
Discretion of
council
the-
members present.
Oh, for the time, what is it, timeframe?
Time
Yeah, it's
periods.
1802.08.
Public comment. Okay.
Yes.
And we're changing time periods may be extended at the discretion of the chair to read, time periods may be extended upon majority vote of council members present.
Right.
Okay.
That's better.
I have,
I'm sorry, you said it's 180208? I thought
Yes.
it was 18020505. I'm sorry.
1802
08.
.08 is that change.
Got it.
The
And
10
then
months is
02,
6 is
let me
what
find it again.
And then 180206.
180206 is the one that's in discussion for
The 10
9
months.
versus 10 months.
Okay, thank you.
Should, what she was referring to, the 18020505, is the planning commission discussion. Does it need to be changed similarly so that the planning commission votes on extending it? Do we have the same problem there, Dick, you think? With,
Well, what does it say?
discretion of the chairperson.
Yeah, that seems to me that that needs to be a collective decision at the planning commission as well.
But the planning commission approved, as a body, they approved that wording.
they approve that wording, yeah, so.
So they
Okay.
were comfortable in that
Okay.
is their part of the process. I would recommend deferring to their recommendation.
Fair enough.
again, more technical in nature.
Yeah.
Any other comments? I have 3 issues. The changes we're talking about, are they significant enough to kick it back? Because it's an ordinance, so if we read it once and then decide we need changes second time around, it's got to go back and start over again, correct? So does it make sense to make the changes and clean it up before we go forward, since there's nothing pressing? I'm fine either way, I'm just trying to save work for the staff.
If you make the determination of the changes that are going to be made, you can approve it on first reading as amended.
Okay.
And then the actual corrections will be made, and it will be reflected at second reading. But again, there's not a rush. If you would rather see the clean document for first reading, we can do that as well.
Because I think we can do the first reading at the agenda if we had to. I'm not advocating for it, but I'm perfectly fine either way. I've not had a chance to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. One of the problems I think we had an issue with in the last couple that have come in front of us is what constitutes a change? What constitutes a change large enough to kick it back to the planning commission and start the clock over type thing? It's not really defined in here what does and doesn't. And I'm not sure there's a way to handle that. But I know that was an issue that came up during the last couple of these.
Well, in particular, in a zoning ordinance, each request that the planning commission looks at oftentimes has conditions attached to it.
Correct.
So if there are conditions that are brought up that have never been considered before, that might be a situation where you might need additional input from the planning commission. If it's something that this body is comfortable with, it's something that has been discussed in the meetings, and you should be fine.
Yeah, my point is,
That's an issue.
it gets to us, it's either for or against the planning commission coming to us, and we stand up here, we hear some citizens' comments, and then we get a developer to say, yeah, I'll agree to that additional stipulation. Is that large enough to send it back to the planning commission and start the clock again, or is it not?
Well-
And how do we define that? Because I see that potentially being a hangup at some point.
Well, the concern
follow me
is-
on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The concern normally when you're dealing with development issues in here is folks need to try to get financing involved to be able to do things. It shouldn't be just a bouncing ball going back and forth between one body to the next. It's got to be some sort of decision-making going on. If it's a decision that you all can make, you feel comfortable with that on the legislative decision on there for that to occur, and that's fine. If it's a new condition no one's thought of, it's something that comes up in the meeting that you hadn't heard of before, then you have the discretion to send it back.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay. All right, we have a, excuse me, first, we've read it, right? Or
You have
we-
not. You
Have not,
read the
okay.
heading.
Can I get a motion?
Well, are you proposing it be sent back?
I'm not proposing anything, I was just asking a question. I wasn't here for the discussion on this at the last meeting, so I was just trying to,
I would make a motion to approve this ordinance,
pending
assuming
changes to
inclusion of the
18.026
amendments that have been agreed upon.
and 1807.08.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, we have a first and a second.
Okay, just to
Further,
clarify, 180206, there was agreement to change 9 to 10.
Correct.
right.
Okay. I was not clear on that.
And the
Thank
other
you.
change is 18.02.08, which is the discretion of the
Upon
majority of the
vote
council.
of council members present.
Correct.
Okay.
And should that be done at the beginning of the hearing as to not, or does that come up under each circumstance? You're not going to sit there and each one have a vote, or you may.
I would recommend that you get to a situation where you raise bar and approve the folks out there, that you have to decide whether you're going to have your time periods to be 7 minutes or 9 minutes or all.
To me, it's only fair if you do it ahead of time so people know what they're walking into.
Is there not something within Robert's rules that covers that, where someone on a commission or a council can call for an inter-discussion?
That puts that power back into the chair, which you tried to avoid by changing this.
No, but I believe a council member can call a point of order, just like calling a question, and call for an inter-discussion, and the council and the committee or council can vote as to whether or not they want to do that. I think so. I think that already exists in Robert's rules.
There's additional questions that you want to ask, if you should, as council members. It's not supposed to be the members of the public controlling that meeting. It's supposed to be this body, making sure that we can do that in the most efficient manner possible and get that question resolved.
Yeah, I don't think that's the question I'm asking. If we had decided to extend the conversation, and it was at some point a council member or a planning commission member could say, can we end the discussion now? Is there not within Robert's Rules of Order a way to call that and call an end to the discussion so that if you see that needs to happen? I'm pretty sure I've read that.
Well, there's a motion call question, is that already received?
I understand that.
In a second, and that works.
Yeah, I'm talking about a call to end discussion. Well, end discussion, okay.
If it passes.
I'm sorry, his mic is just not working right.
Whose is not?
Bill?
Bill's.
It's not on.
Why don't you just leave it on?
Just leave it
I
on.
will leave it on. I actually coughed. I was afraid to cough into this microphone.
All right, any more discussion on that? So we have a first and a second with the two
Two
changes. And you're clear on what those changes
am
are?
clear
Any
on
further discussion on that? Time for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries 5-0.
That's just first reading, so you have.
First reading, correct. So we'll have are we required to do a public hearing on this one?
Yes, you should.
Okay, so we'll have a public hearing at the agenda meeting and a second reading at the agenda meeting, or do we suggest to move that to the regular meeting?
You got to do it at the regular meeting if you could.
Okay, we'll have does it matter if we have the public hearing at the agenda meeting? Because I got a question on that came out of this discussion.
My concern is whether the public can attend it at lunchtime if it's a
Okay.
12:30 meeting.
So we should have it right before at the regular meeting?
Yes,
Okay, everybody okay with that, comfortable?
and that notice has to be 15 days in the paper before the meeting.
All right, Dan made a statement in there that said that we are required by our town charter to allow public comment in every meeting.
And
If that's the case, we don't have time set aside in our agenda meetings. I obviously wasn't aware of it, and we haven't been for a long time. Do we need to put a comment section in the agenda meetings, or are they not considered the regular town meetings?
And I don't have the language right in front of me, but it does outline what will be on the agenda unless it's determined otherwise.
Okay. So
And-
by putting
and
the
it- and
agenda
at
out,
at some point, the decision was made before my time that there wouldn't be that period in
I was just
the
assuming
agenda
that's the way
session.
it's been, because I
If-
never
If
questioned.
nothing else, it might not be a bad idea to revisit that and have that discussion.
Does this council think it's a good idea to have public comments during those agenda meetings?
I think it's a good idea to follow our charter. The charter says that we should be doing it, but we have a mechanism for not doing it, which is.
Which we've
you
been
vote.
using.
No, it requires a vote of the council at the beginning of the meeting to not, Phil can read that probably.
looking for the section right now.
So Bo, what you said by putting on the agenda does not exempt us from that. You said
I'm
by
sorry,
putting
say
an
that again.
agenda, we've basically said, here's our agenda, therefore, and it doesn't have public comment, that clears us of that.
No, I'm just saying, I think there was a decision at some point by council not to have public comment at those meetings.
And I guess it comes back to, and I have no problem either way, but it comes back to this is an agenda meeting or a work session, whatever we want to call it. Does that fall under different rules than our regular meetings?
It is still a published meeting. It is subject to the open records rule here in the town. The question about whether the agenda for that meeting should include an opportunity for public comment is going to be the issue, and whether you have enough time to be able to do that. If you're doing it in the middle of the day, sometimes you've got to go to meetings and come back and forth. I believe is a discretionary item here in the provisions of the charter, and I was looking for the section. It's under the agenda section of the code, and
I would rather err on the side of allowing it to happen.
Yes.
I think part of the problem is that the purpose of the meeting kind of has evolved over time.
Right.
And I think originally it was called the agenda meeting, if I'm not mistaken, and it was specifically that, and it wasn't felt like it was really an issues meeting. I'm guessing, but I think I'm pretty close to being right.
Well,
and over time we began doing.
We've been
business
very specific
more.
to not do only under certain circumstances
not to
to
deal with
approve
finance.
financial and things like that, because there was no comment in there. Does that then
Phil,
change
it's
the way we
1-102,
handle that?
if you're looking for it.
But the truth is we need more time to do.
1-102.
Okay.
We need two meetings.
What's your thought?
It might encourage more participation on.
I'm fine. I think we should do it.
I agree.
I was just doing things the way we've always done them, which I guess you should be looking. Good catch, Dan.
Okay.
Are we okay with adding that then to our next meeting?
I have no problem. I'm in
Boyd?
the charter right now, and I couldn't get into the website for the town. So if it's in the town code, then that's an issue for this body. If you wish to change it, you can. So, but it's not a charter requirement.
It's code.
So it's
Yeah.
code provision.
Regardless if it's in there or not, I don't think it's a bad
Sure.
idea. Are you okay with that, Boyd?
I'm perfectly fine with it.
Everybody okay with that? Okay. I know that was off topic, sorry.
We just, not to beat the dead horse, but we have had citizens come to agenda meetings on more than one occasion. They've never been not permitted, I don't know if that's a sentence or not, to talk. I mean, we've never
We've
shut
set that
down discussion.
There
precedent.
may be a couple.
Yeah, so, but this makes it official.
I think this is,
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think it's a good thing to do.
But,
Okay.
and just to be, so we're clear, if there's a time when we've got 30 minutes or something, and there's really is a light thing, and we're trying to get one thing done, the council, the code says the council can vote to suspend any of the regular items, and the regular items include questions,
Okay.
requests, and concerns of citizens. So the mechanism exists.
In there to
expedite
change if
meeting.
we need to.
And all that is what we talked about, time, manner, and place restrictions, that you've got to sometimes be at meetings. You can't be there for a long period of time. You may need to do that and amend those
Right.
rules.
All right, we're pushing 2 hours. Can we go ahead?
Yes, sir.
All right. Ordinances, last one is the authorizing partial payment of property tax. I got to find it. I'm sorry.
As you're doing that, I apologize, we left off, this is the first reading on this one.
First reading? An ordinance, no, that's not it. Somebody got a copy for me? Thank you. This does not have a number, will be assigned a number if it makes it to second reading. An ordinance to allow for the partial payment of property taxes and to amend Title V, Section 2 of the Town of Signal Mountain Code.
If I can have that back, I'll
Yes,
talk
you
about it.
can.
This is something we've been asked about in the past, and really, it just fell into, that's the way we've always done it, category. The county, city accepts partial payments on property taxes, and we really got into a situation where realization that it may be, as much as anything, our duty to assist our citizens in doing what we need them to do. And that's being able to make partial payments on property taxes up to a certain point. If someone's in arrears and is trying to catch up, and our answer is just, well, we can't take partial payment, to me, that just didn't seem like a position we should be in. So this outlines the manner and means by which we can do that, at what point we can no longer do it. We have sent this to the comptroller's office. If you'll note in the final whereas, there's a place where a date will be put in there when we get approval from the comptroller. So this is, has been reviewed by Phil, largely tracks with Chattanooga's procedures. And we've done everything we can do, again, up to sending it to the comptroller for approval and saying basically that we can manage this system with existing staff, with existing software. It's not going to cause a burden. It's simply a mechanism to assist citizens in doing what they need to do.
And for people on fixed incomes, this is a very good step to take in that regard. It's a lot easier to bite off things in chunks than it is to have the entire amount come due at one point in time. This allows the reduction on any types of collection matters that you may have for back taxes, provided that you actually have the ability, according to the comptroller, to track the payments that have been made. So it's a good thing in that regard, and our letter to the comptroller says we've got that capability.
The assumption here, this is in arrears, but does it, can people pay in advance?
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
Okay.
That's,
So we'll take their money early?
Yes.
All right.
I don't think we have the capability of taking their money in advance.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe we have the ability to take monies in
No,
advance.
once they become due,
Right.
but
that-
they're not, yeah, you said in advance. that's
I
not
did
the
say
case.
in about that.
Once they become due, but they are not yet delinquent,
Right.
we can still take those payments. It's
Right.
not just for delinquent accounts.
As of
Okay.
October 1st of each year.
So I then, go back to my question, we can't take money in advance.
If they have not been assessed, we can't take monies.
Fair enough. Okay, that makes sense. Okay,
And if I
thank you.
could, I think I found
Typo?
something that might need to be changed.
Okay.
On the first page, the last whereas, the comptroller's director of the Division of Municipal Audit approval of the city recorder's request, and I believe it was the town manager's
Yes, thank you.
request.
Good catch. Any more discussion on that? All those in favor, aye?
Oh, wait, there hasn't been a motion.
Need a motion.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a first and second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries 5-0 on first reading. Next, discussion items. Live streaming of council meetings. Boyd?
I'm going to defer primarily to Dan on this. We pretty much have everything in place now to live stream our meetings, and I think it's just an opportunity to discuss procedures, protocols, habits, and such, so that we can optimize that product.
yeah. So, yeah, this will only take a moment. So everybody's wearing headsets, and that's the camera over there. It's on that microphone stand. We're going to find a way to mount that somewhere so that it's up and out of the way with some other things that are happening. Just some notes that I took. Obviously, there's a tendency for people to not want to use these things.
Is your
But-
mic on?
I'm
Sorry.
And yes, my mic is on.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
And we can always, so that's a good point. It's going to take us a little bit to tweak the system. One of the things that we've talked about doing from the beginning of this is up along that back wall, we probably need to put a little bit of baffling, and it can be decorative, but something that will stop the speakers from bouncing, which will allow us to turn the volume of everything up. Everything in this room still works, just as it is. We can turn these on, but the more microphones you have on, the more likely it is to cause feedback. So there's no reason to have the extras on. The headsets need to be on. The wires need to go below the ear, just some basic things like that. And maybe I need to create a sheet for anybody using them or something that we
I
can
think
hand
that
out
would be a good
for
idea.
meetings. So I thought about doing that. You still need to speak up as if you're talking to the back of the room, just like you normally would. Because if I could turn these up so everything's really loud. And like even here, I'll show you, we have the ability, even on each one of these things, I can turn myself up so that it begins to be too loud. And we're going to slowly balance that, but that's built into every one of these things. However, there's some things we have to watch, though, is you really need to keep them on. Because it takes about a second once you turn it off for it to come back on. So if you need to turn it on and say something quickly, the thing that you say doesn't happen. And also, if we're turning them off all the time, we won't be recorded for votes. This isn't just about that live streaming system. This is about the official recording that Carol makes. If we're turning these off and she's going back and trying to do minutes, she won't hear whether or not we voted if she needs to go back and check something. So
Or I won't hear pertinent comments that might be important to add into the minutes.
that's right, yeah. She can't do the minutes well unless these things are left on, which also brings us to, it's happened a couple of times tonight. For instance, when somebody asked Loretta a question, Loretta, what she said won't be heard because she wasn't asked to come to the mic. So that's something that all of us who conduct meetings will have to be pretty serious about saying, I need you to come to the microphone. So we live streamed tonight. So this is going out live. And if you guys want to go back and listen to it to get an idea of how you're coming through and what those problems cause. And we'll talk about where the live stream is going to be in a minute because it's not at its permanent place right now. We're still just experimenting. But if you go to YouTube and you type in the words Signal Mountain Town Council and then Signal Watch, you'll find a list of things that have to do with the Signal Mountain Town Council. Look down that list and look for the user Signal Watch. You know how you have a YouTube account that has a name on it. If you look for Signal Watch, you can go to Signal Watch and then subscribe to that. And when you go there, you'll see everything that's ever been. So, and I guess this is the point for, if you guys have any questions about that, I can tell you, but to get to the point that's maybe for council discussion is this needs to become a town property, basically, that YouTube channel, I think. And maybe that's just an administrative decision we need to make, but the only thing that's on there, it's just Signal Mountain business meetings. And so we could put Carol and Boyd or whoever we want to be on there as an administrator, but it's one of those things where you don't want everyone to have that password as well, because that could be problematic. So I guess that's it, but we're officially live streaming.
I appreciate all your effort in getting that done, because that's been a 4-year effort on my part, and you completed it, so I appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's a good idea, just during the meeting, like you talked about clearing your throat.
Yes.
It makes us all uncomfortable, because you still wonder, but just turn it back on immediately, but notice it just now came back on.
Okay.
There's always that little bit of pause, because it has to reconnect with the system.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Discuss items, TAP grant and TDOT multimodal grant application. Boyd?
I think most of you have probably seen that we received a TAP grant from the state, and we've talked about for quite a while a project that would put a controlled crosswalk on James Boulevard over to a sidewalk at Rolling Way. We'll come down along Rolling Way through the town property here and ultimately would connect to a multimodal path project that's out on the highway. This is one of the heaviest traveled areas, especially for kids in the summer, and it'll be a huge improvement to the safety of kids walking to the pool, ball fields, and whatever. So we've received a grant. This is a good problem to have, but it's a little bit of a problem. We applied for this grant once and didn't receive it. It's very competitive. And we reapplied. And now we've received the grant. The cost estimates for this project are relatively dated. So we're going to have to look at how we might have to scale this project to get within the budget constraints that are there. It's my understanding that we can minimize the project without reducing the grant award if we can show that need. We've also applied for a multimodal grant that is for that same project, because at that time, we had not received this award. That grant is a higher amount. Our match would be lower. But again, an extremely competitive grant. And Loretta, if you would please come to the microphone and prepare
And-
to,
I'm going to turn, while she's there, turn that up a bit, which you've wanted it to be most of the night.
so really, initially, we were going to have a resolution tonight authorizing an application in support and commitment to the multimodal grant application. And then we got this TAP grant. So really just want to have a discussion with council as to how we want to proceed. One of the options would be to accept the TAP funds and proceed with that. And then look at changing the scope of our multimodal project.
Right.
But we have a limited time frame in which we can do that. And just as the last word before I turn over to Loretta, right now, we have a sidewalk, the Old Town Sidewalk Project, which is extensive. We have the multimodal path along the highway, and now we have this project coming through this complex. So we have quite a few projects that are now moving forward in various states. And to be frank, you have to also wonder how much we can manage and handle at one time. So it's kind of a unique situation. Again, a good one to have, but just wanted to have discussion.
And you're saying not just from a financial standpoint, I think. I mean,
Correct.
resources
Personnel.
across the board.
Yeah.
Does this affect the bike ped plan?
Does it affect it? I think it's mentioned in it.
I believe this is already
Yeah.
mentioned in the bike ped plan, because we talked about in the bike ped adding in the sidewalks to connect James Boulevard at Rolling Way, go all the way to, the commercial district. So this will give us a piece of that in there. So that's already been, it's just part of the plan, so we'll be completing that part of the plan.
Right, but I don't recall in the ped plan that we had any kind of a light system for crossing up there.
No, that may not be, as that really addressed primarily the connectivity part of it and the pathways and where they would be.
Right, I thought you mentioned that was part of the original TAP grant, some sort of,
That's part of the grant that we've been awarded.
that we actually got awarded, but
Yes.
if we wanted to do that, we don't have enough money to do it based on what the grant is now.
No, that is one thing that we would definitely do.
We do,
If we have to reduce the scope of that project, it will be some of the interior sidewalks in the complex here, I think. And that's one of the issues that we would have with the multimodal application, is that those don't really fit with that grant.
With that grant process.
Program.
Or the program, yeah.
I
Because
want to say plan, program.
we would need to change, from what we heard on the multimodal application, we need to change some of that. We had some comments back to scale back some of the sidewalk we had in there. But we do still want to have the lighted crosswalks, which we put in the first TAP grant.
Right.
Now, I don't know if those specifics show up on our bike ped plan.
I don't recall
I mean,
that.
I don't think we have anything that specific, but when we go to the application, that's when we want to get to the actual project, then we'll get to those specifics. So at this point, I still need to find out, what the comments are on the multimodal application specifically, and how we might need to revise that.
That was pretty much it. The sidewalks adjacent to and around the ball fields being not directly connective to the highway were seen as the problematic parts of that application.
So, but we did get awarded the one, so.
Yay.
That is good, and that does help us follow our bike ped plan.
Yeah.
That's just one little piece of it.
Right, okay.
So it was kind of again, change in process when we were looking at pursuing one grant, and now we've been awarded a grant for that same project. So, you know, I think, do we have anyone else here who could shed light on?
We do have a representative from TDOT here.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure.
I don't know if she wants to speak or not, but she was,
Make sure she comes up to the mic, all right? Just make sure she gets
we
up to
just
the mic.
met today, so,
And thank you for coming. Jennifer said you might come, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. Sure, Andrea Noel. I actually live here on the mountain, 2209 Morningdove Lane.
And who are you with? I'm sorry.
TDOT.
Tita, great, perfect.
So what Boyd and Loretta have stated is accurate. They did receive the TAP award while they were in the midst of applying for the multimodal grant. So I was the one that commented on the multimodal grant, and as the application stood, it would have not been accepted. So we made some, comments on changing it, but really would like for you to still apply for the multimodal grant because that money is sitting on the table, and, we never know after this year if we're going to get that funding back again. So we'd love to see you apply and still get part of that. And I feel like if I work with Loretta, we can make an application that you guys could. And so what we could do too is have the TAP grant and see what that will fund, which portion of your project that will fund, and then also maybe work into the portion that the multimodal grant will fund.
What's the deadline on the multimodal grant?
Pretty quick, September 11th is the next meeting.
Did you vote on these grant awards?
Do I vote? Personally, no.
All right.
I do not have a vote.
Inside track or something?
No, I don't have a vote, but my
All right.
mission is to help put forth the best application that we can.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to do with the James Boulevard project?
It's going. We're just waiting on pricing. Everything's been approved.
That's good.
So I guess at this point, the question is, I think what makes sense is to move forward with the TAP project, and then we'll evaluate what changes we may need to make because of the age of the cost estimates and all of that, and then see if that's something we could work into multimodal, or if we can identify something more appropriate and yet still, again, be manageable. The only thing, to me, the only thing worse than not getting grant funds is getting grant funds and not being able to pull off the project.
Right.
We want to do it, we want to do it right.
When does this have an impact on what budget year are you talking about here?
For the TAP process will begin, well, we will be covering engineering and design on that.
That would hit this year.
When we tap, we have to cover the engineering design on multimodal. That's
part of it.
In the current budget just approved?
We anticipate that to be in the 18-19.
Right.
I have a question. Is there any advantage, you think, when municipalities that are next door to each other work together? Because I know that Walden is going for the multimodal grant as well. I mean, there's not just one winner, right?
Are you asking?
Yes, yeah, because you're with TDOT.
The projects can stand alone on their own. I'm not sure if when the committee looks at the applications together, that they'll say, oh, well, there's two applications, so we should. I will say that I read the Walden application, and it was very good. So, it's got a very high probability of being funded. So I think, if we submit that and say, look, we have this section in the middle that's with the tip, that's already going to be funded, and then Walden gets one on one side, maybe we can do a project on the other side.
That's what I'm
And then
wondering.
we've got 3 miles of,
Yeah. Right. That would be great.
Okay, what was their bad news? You sort of intimated there's.
Bad news is we want to make
It's
sure
just,
we
we need
funds
to
get it
shift
done.
gears a little bit and just want to make sure the council's comfortable with. Basically, we have a grant. Now, again, the TAP doesn't pay as much on the project as the multimodal would, and the multimodal had more current cost estimates. But that just is what it is. I mean, we have very good fortune to have this grant and I think we take advantage of it. And we'll see what we can do from there.
Thank you very much.
All right.
20. All right. Anything else on that?
No, sir.
Other business?
Yes.
Are you appointing?
Yeah.
Request.
Yeah, go ahead.
During the month of July, Signal Mountain Playhouse produces a play every year. And recently, we've been getting more successful on an annual basis. This year, we produced Shrek, except for one rainout night. We had full crowds every night, and everybody enjoyed the play. I would come out and announce the play like I normally do and request a show of hands of how many people were not from Signal Mountain, and typically it was half the crowd. So we're drawing from off the mountain. So it's kind of a neat deal. It also includes a fellow that is coming back regularly, and it's Greg Glover. Greg has been Professor Harold Hill. He has gotten lost in Brigadoon. He was Willy Wonka, and this year he was Shrek. He is actually in love with the town of Signal Mountain. He comes back because he really enjoys it. The people enjoy him. He's a kid magnet. I mean, the kids love him. He doesn't come in as a celebrity. He comes in as a member of the community and kind of is accepted that way. We don't give keys to the town, I don't think, but I'm proposing we do something to recognize the participation of Greg Glover in our town activities and invite him here and recognize him for his participation in the cultural part of our community. So that's
Great idea.
Great.
That's a great idea.
Can we force him to be Shrek when he does?
I think it would be a great idea with all the sound effects as well. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And on the same note.
But he is a really neat guy, extremely talented. If you think he's just a newscaster, think again, because he is really, really talented. And he's a great influence on our young people, and glad to have him. Anyway, that's what I have.
Excellent.
On the same note, maybe you're going to say about that. I just wanted to thank you for all your years of service.
You're welcome.
I was going to hit that.
And as mayor and as council person, I've gleaned a great deal of wisdom from you, so I appreciate you serving.
I've served on 3 councils, all of them a little different. I can't remember a council that didn't disagree from time to time, which we have. But I haven't served on any council I didn't believe was working toward the betterment of the town of Signal Mountain. I think we've succeeded, and I think my time on previous councils has been productive. I'm honored to have been part of it. I would like to come back. It's late, but I would like to come back and thank people in a formal setting, and maybe I'll do that at the next meeting. Okay.
Well,
It's been my honor and pleasure to serve the town of Signal Mountain.
I think. Thank you, Dick. Dan, anything? Amy?
No.
Anything? Bob?
We had a meeting, Centennial Committee, but I'll go over some of that information with the agenda.
From the agenda meeting? Okay.
If I may, relative to Dick's departure, I want to point out that, and it's something you may want to take up at the agenda session, beyond filling his position on council, there'll also need to be a determination as to who will be appointed to the Planning Commission and who will be the vice mayor.
Okay.
And we have a WWTA appointment to address. So there are other things.
Can we discuss
beyond-
that at next? At the agenda meeting? Okay.
I would just like to thank my fellow council members for being so understanding about my new position, and also report that the hospital did pass joint commission, so I'm back to the land of the living.
Excellent.
And I appreciate all of your patience.
Congratulations. Boyd, anything else?
No, sir.
Phil?
No, sir.
Carol? All right, I've got quickly, next meeting is 8/24, which is Friday at 12:30. That's our agenda meeting. Our next regular meeting is September 10th, 2018, unless some sort of emergency meeting comes up for some reason, at 6:30 PM. James Boulevard has been approved, and it's ready to go. It's been funded. So if the folks at Alexian are watching this live, and MAC is being worked on. The one point on the MAC I would like to make, this council during our budget discussions decided to take a couple $100,000 because the overrunning costs for the MAC and take it out of the rec funding where we had a grant and put it into the MAC. I just want the council to remember that there was tacit commitment around the table to get that put in because not only are you taking $200,000 out of the rec, but you lose the matching funds as well. So that $200,000 is really $400,000 that we took out of rec and put to MAC. So I think it's imperative this council finds a way to replace that. That's all I got. We're adjourned. Oh, wow, geez, sorry.
right.
Didn't mean that was louder than I expected.
So, just a note, everybody turn off your mics.
Yep.
Or
Should I set this down here and do it again?
see you later. You want a cupcake?